So thank you guys for having me here tonight. I was fortunate enough to bring my bride with me for 53 years. Sandy is my wife. Yeah, she's been surprised so far. Tomorrow in Kentucky, it's supposed to be 70 degrees. But it is going to go down to 38 on Friday. So it's just a small stretch. So I do thank you for coming out tonight and hearing what we have to say. My focus tonight, which I knew it wouldn't work once I got up here. Hold on. Okay, there we go. So I've had the privilege so far over the last 4 years of working with well over 200 farmers across the nation that are high yield growers, and they're seeking to grow high yields. Well, one of the things that I've learned that many of you are accustomed to, when I talk to them, they no longer use pints and quarts of anything. They use gallons of lots of things to get to that high yield. So we're going to look at mainly for like soil health. So when we ask the question, well, what hinders me from getting to that higher yield? I used to run a co-op back in Kentucky a few years ago. Matt's been at a co-op. Others in here have too. And anytime the farmer came in and said, I want to grow more corn, I want to grow more bushels, the only answer we ever had was, well, you need more NPK. And my question to you is, of all the years you've used NPK, has your yields continued to go up every year? And I venture to say the answer is probably no. So what I'm finding out from all these high yield growers, not only are we developing a liquid program for them, and I'll show you that here in a few minutes, but we know that we have to remediate the salts that's in their soils because it has plateaued their yields and it's also plateaued their soil biology. And we have to have the biology to make it work. So we're going to focus mainly on soybeans tonight. However, you have to manage soybeans and you have to manage corn, you have to manage canola, any crop you're growing, sunflowers. So in the case of soybeans, what you see on the screen is you want usually a short vegetative stage. And then when you see the first bloom, you are entering the reproductive stage. Especially on a soybean plant, you can affect its yield throughout all of its reproductive stages. Like we see up here that you've got the flowers. I want to keep as many flowers on as I can. All your universities talk about that you abort around 65% of your flowers. So if I can feed the plant or have it healthy enough that it holds more flowers, then that equates to more pods being formed at the nodules. Then if I can hold those on and put more beans in those pods, whether it's 3 bean, 4 bean, even 2 bean, then I have the potential each stage out to add to it, like making the beans denser. Then I've added tissues. So each one of those stages has the potential of giving me higher and higher yield. But I have to watch it, I have to manage it. So we know that we have products, Billy and Brad sell products that will affect that, whether it's foliar or in the soil. And then when we talk about the components of yield, then we see that it starts with plants per acre. Of course, we know population affects that. Then, of course, what we were talking about, your nodes per plant, your pods per node. And by the way, I think scientists say it's a maximum you could get of 12 pods per node. And I actually have not seen that. I have seen as 8. But the more I can put per node, the more yield potential I have. And occasionally you'll find a 5B plant. And most of the time it's 3, 2, 3, so on forth. Then the size of the seed affects your yield as well as the test weight. So all of these components go into the yield of the soybean. So when we talk about corn, corn is actually opposite. This is a grass plant or soybeans or a legume. When you're growing corn, you affect your yield down here. V4, V5, I determine my rows around. So I want 18, I've seen as high as 22 rows around. So I'm forming my rows around here. What happens from V4 to here, which is around V8, 10, somewhere in there. Now I am determining how many kernels per row. And if I can feed it or make it healthy enough that when it gets here, I can now take it, for example, instead of 14 around and 20 some kernels long, I can have 18 to 20 around and around 30. I've seen as high as 38 kernels long. Now you're in the category that you can get on up into a lot higher yields. In fact, you'll see some of the yields that hits from probably in the 300s will be something like that at about 38,000 population. And then even when I come on out here after tassel, if I have good health of the plant, and I can even feed it something at this stage, I can induce more kernel weight. And I have seen as high as 68 pounds per test weight, which then equates to more yield. And then these are the components of corn yield. Is your ears per acre or population, and then your kernel number, kernel weight, as well as your rows around. So these are part of the yield components that we're wanting to look at in soybeans and corn. So when we think about growing anything, it doesn't matter if it's canola, soybeans, sunflowers. Every one of the plants that you guys plant in the spring is a factory. So it harvests sunlight. It really is the same thing. Even if you grow stuff in your garden, ladies, is you want more yield, you want more tomatoes, you want more green beans. It's about collecting the light, sunlight, photosynthesis, then that produces sugars, hormones in the plant. Then the plant can't go anywhere. It's stuck right where it's at. So how does it get nutrients? Through its root system, of course. But it also has a symbiotic relationship with the soil. This is exactly how God made everything to work. Whether it was the plains back many thousands of years ago that had a buffalo on it, nobody fertilized it except the buffalo. But that's how the reproductive cycle takes place. So it produces the hormones and the enzymes, and then it exudes it out through its root system to feed the biology. So the biology goes and gets what the plant needs. So this is why there's such a focus on soil health, so to speak, to get that into the plant. We talk about controlling the controllables. Well, these are the uncontrollables: the light, the humidity, temperature, water, CO2. When we think of light, sunlight, Like, what was it, a few years ago, you guys experienced some forest fire smoke, and that held back your sunlight. Did it affect your yield? It probably did. I don't know if you know how much it did or not, but anything that hinders that sunlight is going to affect the yield. These on the right side is many, many things that we can control, which goes into the management aspect. And what we're going to look at is if you want to manage your crop to get to the highest yield potential, what we have found, or what I've found working with those farmers, they all have in-furrow applications. They all have 2x2x2, and then they also wide row. Now, why does that make any kind of difference? Here's the other thing I was telling you that you were fighting. When you look at the many fertilizers that we use throughout the years and each year, and the salt index that's associated with it, that hinders the soil biology. And it also hinders your roots. We did an experiment about 3 years ago, and we took you've heard of the Soil Warrior machine. We injected around 800 pounds of dry fertilizer in row and planted over top of it. It literally pruned the corn roots. It burnt them because it was so hot of that high salt index that you see here. Your muriate of potash, of course, is probably the one we use the most all across the country, and it's probably one of the worst because you're carrying with it 47% chlorine, and that doesn't do your biology any good either. So this is one of the reasons that we actually have the success that we're having with liquid programs. Here's the biology that we're talking about in the soil. These are your workforce underground. It doesn't matter if it's in your field or in your garden, no matter what crop that you're growing, you have to have these working for you. And if you don't, you'll never get your dry fertilizer completed. You'll never get the nutrients into your plant without their work. And there's thousands, if not millions, of species that's in the soil that does the work that they do. Here's another interesting thing. This is a biochemical sequence of nutrition in any plant, any that you're growing. It starts with boron, and boron actually associates with silicon, which many soils have silicon in it. If you want to make sure you've got plenty, then have a soil test run and get silica test run. But it sequences together from one to the other to get the nutrients into the plant. Now, why do I even show you this? Because many of your soil tests will come back showing that you are very low in boron. If you've ever had that you go out and it's already past brown silk, you pull the shuck down and it did not fill to the end, more than likely that's lack of boron. Also, boron helps extend pollination period. So if you got adequate boron, and all of these farmers that I'm talking about, these 200 plus, use boron religiously in their 2x2, in their wide drop, many times even in the second wide drop. And it's not quarts, it's gallons. But that's how they get to these higher yields. When we look at even soybeans, and this is during the reproductive stages, we see on like sulfur, this is sulfur, zinc, boron, manganese, iron, copper. There is cycles in here where it really needs it. And if you don't have it there, it's going to affect your yield. So think about those things. If you want to really get preparing yourself to get to the higher yield, it's going to take soil testing. It's going to take tissue testing. Many times these farmers will tissue sample and pull a soil sample at the same time. Well, what they're trying to find out is, what do I still have available in the soil? And is it getting into the plant? You do realize it doesn't matter at all what you have in the soil if it's not getting into the plant, because that's what produces the yield. So you want to make sure you're going to get it there, is you soil test, you tissue test, and then you make adjustments accordingly, whether it's wide drop or injection between the row to get that per ball. Here again, the plant is a factory, and all of these things go together to produce the highest yield that you're going to get. If you lack some of these, that's where you plateau in your yield. So it's all about how we manage the factory. So in this particular, this was a little video. Well, here's what you're looking at. Many of you guys probably fight compaction layers. And if this video had played, the roots will go out this way. So you're only farming from here to the surface, even though you got all this soil. When a compaction layer is there, it's limited your production zone. So it's going to matter what you have from here up to get to that yield factor. And our liquid carbon product actually helps break up compaction. Here's what I'm talking about for those high yield guys. They focus on an in-furrow starter, premium blend starter. Many of them have added more carbon, the humic product, and sugar, agri-sweet sugar. A few years back, we kept hearing things about farmers were using sugar. So in one of the farmer meetings, I asked a question. I said, how many of you guys in here are using sugar? Well, all kinds of hands went up. It actually surprised us. And we said, well, where are you getting your sugar? Well, Walmart, Kroger, some kind of grocery. You go in and buy those bags of sugars and they dissolve it. I said, well, how's that working? Well, it's a mess. And it stops up a lot of our nozzles and strainers, but we see a big difference in the plant when we put sugar in. So we developed AgriSweet, which is a 55% sugar, refined, very clean, mixes well. And when you put the two together, in this case, the carbon and the sugar, these two work synergistically together in your soil. The carbon and the humic will help release tied up nutrients that's in the soil, making them available to the plant. Now remember, how does the plant get the nutrient? Microbial activity. And AgriSweet is a food source for microbes that makes them replicate fast, tremendously, energizes. So we're doing this right in the furrow on the seed. And you're having all kinds of things happen in that furrow. When you've got all three combined, now you have available peat quickly. You've got release of nutrients quickly. You've got microbes multiplying quickly. Therefore, you will get a better germination, a more consistent germination, and you'll get faster emergence because of what's going on in that furrow. The next thing they do is a 2x2x2. Now, I mentioned on here front load. This is where those farmers are what we call front loading at planting. So we use the starter again, even in the 2x2. We have more carbon and more sugar because it surrounds that whole root zone. But they also front load it with more potash, more sulfur, more boron, in some cases iron, manganese even, And what you're doing is you're putting these liquid nutrients all around that root zone, which readily available to that plant, whatever stress it's about to encounter after you've got it up and going. So this is what they're doing with front loading. Next, here's another scenario that they focus on. If you're going to do 15, 20-inch rows, for example, of soybeans. And by the way, more and more farmers are using liquid starters with their soybeans. Think about this. You've got huge advances in corn genetics because you're paying for it. Remember, $300+ a bag. That means you've got the greatest yield potential you've ever had with genetics. The same thing is happening with soybeans. So you've got tremendous yield potential with soybeans. So how do I manage high yielding soybeans? We're doing the same thing with soybeans that we're doing with corn. We're putting furrow, we're using 2x2, and then we'll talk about Y drop here in a minute. But we're also putting other products in there to help sustain that plant, that factory, and get it going faster, better, more blooms, more pods, more nodules, and all like that. That's how I'm going to get to the higher yield. And if you don't have any of these, and you do drill, for example, and you don't have any of that equipment on your planter, then here's a program that we use, like a broadcast, using these same kind of products. And by the way, it's bringing in micros. It has the fulvic component in it, which helps it to drive it into the plant better, quicker. And then we're also using that when we apply fungicides or anything else, insecticides across the plant, because we're driving it into the plant faster and quicker and better. So those are some of the things that we're doing. In addition to this, here's what you end up getting in furrow, 2x2, and then it's usually a 2 underneath, but you're feeding that root zone. The other thing is, and I'm not trying to make you not understand something, but what you're doing is you're farming right here. You're not farming the entire field, which helps on input cost, which also helps with efficiency of the nutrients that you're putting in the soil and around that root zone for that crop to make the most of that it can. So all the products that you're throwing out here between the rows is a small percentage that it may even get. And that's where we talk about the dry pit, being very inefficient. And what these farmers are doing is using these liquid programs to farm in a concentrated zone. That way they can manage the most that they're putting out there and getting it into the plant to get to this higher yield. Of the farmers I worked with now for 4 years, last year we had over 15 of them hit 300 bushel, first time they've ever done it in their life. And that was with liquid program. We have a few farmers that has not applied dry fertilizer for over 18 years. And they're getting, and they are in the 300 range. And when you soil test, their nutrients are still coming up. It's not depleting it. It's not mining it like you think it will. When you feed the biology and you feed the soil, they will continue to release and produce actually more nutrients available for those plants to take up. This one was a video of a soil warrior machine, not for the reason that soil warrior does, which they inject dry fertilizer through those tubes, but we have farmers today that run what we call a strip till machine, and all they're using it for is a seed bed. So again, they're coming through strip tilling, and let's say 30 inches apart or whatever it is where they're going to plant, and they're preparing a seed bed. Now, some of them have rigged up their rigs to inject liquid down deeper, and then they plant right over top of it with that same kind of program in furrow, 2 by 2, and then they'll come back later and water. So when we talk about management and getting to the higher yield, these are some of the things you want to look for, especially on the soybean plant. Remember, soybeans require more nitrogen than corn. But these nodules is what I need on the soybean roots to produce the nitrogen. And so some of them you even double inoculate. Some you're going to put down something that really feeds these nodules. Remember, if I'm going to put it and go to this system where I put it in furrow and 2 by 2, and I use carbon and sugar, even on soybeans, I'm going to feed the bacteria that makes those nodules. So I'm going to have more of them, I'm going to have bigger, and I'm going to have more nitrogen produced on these soybeans. Here's a native soil rhizobia, and then here's one that's been freshly inoculated. You see how many more nodules you have on them. And I know that you guys run into a lot of times iron porosis, where the nodules don't develop because the iron is so high, and it's in a different valent, so it becomes toxic. Well, even your carbon and your sugars will help overcome that, because it's going to release iron to make it available to the plant. So one of our major products are these two. We now encourage any farmer to use these two together because they synergistically help each other perform at a greater level than one by itself. So remember, the humics are a catalyst in the soil. We have a test that we actually run on many of those farmers, or they run it. It's called a total soil digestion. And it comes back and tells them how many thousands of pounds of fertilizer they still have in their soil. And I'm talking just 6 inches, 8 inches deep. What you get on your soil test is what's available. You don't test for and know how much do I really have out there. So once you know, then what you really need is a catalyst or a stimulant or something that would release the nutrients I have to feed that crop. Therefore, I don't have to keep putting on more. And then the liquid program supplements in addition to what the plant needs, and it makes it available very quickly. So when you put on dry fertilizer, it takes moisture, time, temperature, microbes to break down the dry fertilizer. Not with liquid. Liquid's immediately available. So they work together.
So Joe,
yeah.
a good question. So if you're using some other kind of liquid fertilizer, you can add the liquid carbon to that fertilizer, no problem. Right?
Guarantee you it'll make it work. Yes. Yeah. And I don't know, I may have a slide in here, but one of the liquids you don't want to use, and I know that this is probably going to go against you guys, is 1034O. It's cheap, yeah, but it's really high in salt. It's really inefficient. And remember, I think I have a slide that says, remember, a plant, any plant, only takes up phosphorus in an ortho form. 1034O is a poly. So it takes your microbes maybe as much as 40 days to convert that poly into ortho to make it come up in the plant. And you're using a starter to provide early phosphorus for that plant to take off and get going. So 1034 oil is not your best friend. But if you are using some other liquid, then yes, carbon and sugar will make it perform a lot better. So again, it's just our proprietary activated humic technology. It really is an engineered product. We have taken it apart. As many of you probably know, there's probably, I'd say 32 humics on the marketplace, and it's probably even growing. But they are not an activated humic product. They are a suspended product. And what do I mean by suspended? Would be that if you took, let's say, salt granules, and you put it in your little cups here of water, and it never dissolves, now you've got the suspended salt in water. That's what you have with many of the other humics in the marketplace. You have a brown coal, crushed and ground, liquefied, put in water, and it's on the bottom. You've probably encountered some of them, where it's got thick sludge and stuff on the bottom, stops up your strainer, won't mix well. All these things, that's a suspended product. Ours is a true solution. So we have made it dissolved. It's in a solution form. It's clean. It's quick to take up, mixes well with anything, and therefore it activates whatever it is mixed with. And even on top of that, it's ARMA certified. So this is just a little cross section of what humic substances do. They are actually, a shortcut would say, they're protectors. So they coat not only the cells, walls of the plant or the leaf of the plant, and they have protection. Fulvics, on the other hand, are smaller molecules and they are drivers. So when you add Surge XD to your boron or your zinc or manganese, you are adding a product that helps drive that micronutrient into the plant quicker, better, faster, more efficiently. Can you use less and get more results? That's for you to experiment, but there is a possibility. So again, remember, it's a major soil catalyst, freeing up tied up roots. Now we have a dry form, yes. We used it to blend with a lot of dry fertilizers that pig farmers are applying because it's going to help buffer salt. Even the liquid does that. Sugars are a buffer as well. So when you're adding it to another product that is a salty product, you're buffering that salt. You're helping to take out the component of salt, which does a lot of burning. If you've ever sprayed liquid nitrogen on something and it burnt the leaves, that was the salt that's in the liquid nitrogen. Pull moisture out of the leaves so fast it burnt the leaves. AgriSweet here again, but remember it's a refined sugar, 55%, probably one of the highest on the market. But it is a major stimulating food source that is beneficial for all biology, all microbes. And we use it, even spraying it on the plant is like an energy. Like you eat a candy bar, you get some energy. You're spraying sugar on a plant, it gives the plant energy. Therefore, it can manufacture the sunlight, the photosynthesis even better, and produce more enzymes, hormones, and stuff for the soil, for the microbes. And this is just a cross section of some of the market that's on the market. Ours has 2 sugar sources in it, glucose and fructose, 55%, ready to use, very available. QLF, which is pretty prominent in the market. It's this analysis, only one kind of sugar, sucrose. So 30%, you get maybe 10 to 20% take up of that product. Molasses being the thickest one on the marketplace. You all know how thick molasses sometimes. Well, it's only one source of sugar. It's 30 to 40% uptake. And dilution is needed also, water or something to help in it. And then table sugar. Yeah, it's 99%. It's one source, but it's very low uptake and dilution is needed. You have to get it all into suspension, dissolved. It's a lot of headache. That's why farmers want something that's quick, easy to use, and efficiently into the plant. And this there just shows your analysis of how much of each sugar there is. Our catalog, I think, says 2 to 4 quarts. We now have these same how you farmers are using over the course of the season, usually 4 to 5 gallons, maybe 6, depending on what's happening in the weather front, to help get the energy back into the plant, help it to produce more and more enzymes and hormones. Again, that's just the analysis. And these are some of the benefits that you'll see, because that's what happens when the plant receives the sugar as well as the microbes. It is a stress reliever because of the energy it's supplying to the plant. And therefore the plant reacts to it saying, hey, I can handle more stress now. Premium blend is one of our top products. Remember what I told you about that plants only take up phosphorus in an ortho form. And this being 100% orthophosphate. And actually, this is one of the top orthophosphates because there is a food grade, and under food grade is well, this one happens to be the top of the line, the food grade orthophosphate, very readily taken up by the plant, makes it perform very well. And I know Billy is using quite a bit of this. Some of you guys in the room are probably using this. Are you using enough? I guess that's the next question. Is if you're putting it in a furrow, do you need more? Are you putting it in 2x2? Do you need more? To front load it to carry the plant out into the season. Because at second, you run out of fuel. If you happen to catch it in time, you can probably save the plant and save your yield potential. But the second you start seeing a deficiency show up of any kind, it's cost you yield. Well, once it's cost you yield, you can't get yield back. So when we talk about managing with in furrow, 2x2, and wide dropping, we are constantly feeding the plant so it doesn't lack anything and it doesn't run a stress factor that costs yield. Again, this is the analysis. We also got a little bit of sulfur in here and some zinc. And the potash, available phosphate, remember this 100% ortho. So this is a great product to use. You can actually use it in the soil. You can actually do foliar. Yes, sir.
How dependent is this on the farm? If it's dry.
Well, that's the beauty of the liquid programs. If I'm talking about the entire liquid program, is once you've put humics and sugars and you've got a product like this that already has some in it, you have helped. I won't say it's fixed it, but you have helped it to still be available, and even if you encounter a lot of a dry spell or something like that. I have some of these farmers that's been using liquid programs now for, gosh, I don't know, 10, 12 years. They tell me that they have helped drought proof their soils when they use the liquid program. Well, it's anywhere from Nebraska, Illinois, Ohio, a little bit of Iowa. I don't have too many, but they're telling me this. And in fact, one of the guys testified to me last fall that he had right after he planted, and he used the total liquid. He had 6 weeks no rain. And yes, his corn didn't curl, but it wasn't growing. But the second he got rain, and remember, humics, liquid carbon, and sugar is also a stabilizer. So it will help stabilize whatever nutrients you have it with. The second it rained and he took a tissue sample, all of his nutrients surged up into the plant, so it had protected them. They were there still to be taken up because of the stabilization ability of both humics and sugars. And you just have to really experiment and do that over time because he's conditioned his soil for years where it will do that. Will it do that for you the very first year? It might, I don't know. Depends on where your soils are at now. So what we're finding out is that the high yield farmers that have begun to back off of their dry fertilizers and go to liquids, not only can they control their cost, instead of front loading, throwing dry out there and hoping everything gets converted, now they can almost spoon feed it and decide, do I need to Y drop more in after I take a tissue sample, or do I just need to stop? The weather's not going to cooperate, so I'm not going to spend more money. But that's the beauty of the liquid product. But it takes time, it takes equipment. Yes, you have to get your equipment equipped. Some of them do it in stages. Some has only in furrow. Some has only 2x2. And after they've done it for a few years, then they add the other component to it. So they're running the whole full liquid program. So I hope that answered your question to some degree. So here's a one from North Dakota in 2020. Here's your premium blend, 120.9. Remember what I told you about 1034 high in salt, and it's in a poly form, so it didn't get very much conversion very fast. Well, here's your control. Your control did 2 more bushel, or a little more than that, than the 1034. So in this case, not in all cases, but when you're using a high salt starter, you might set your yield back and then you don't get to recover. So again, the benefits of using a high 100% ortho product shows here over your control by all means. And again, if you're stuck in 1034, this is all I'm ever going to use, then put more humics and carbons and sugars in it, and it'll make it perform. I've seen that happen. So it'll do that. Hay Now is one of our better products. This is actually a very multi-use product. We use it in hay, pasture, corn, soybeans, liquid fertilizer, spray, foliar, you name it, we use it that way. I think Billy talks about using it here with 8-16-8. So remember, don't worry about the name. We do use it on hay, but we also use it on corn, soybeans, and other crops. But the analysis is 795 plus 4.5 sulfur, plus your 8-16-8 makes a great foliar application to boost that corn or soybeans or canola or anything along to make it perform better and give it that energy that it needs to handle any kind of stress that's coming after it. Here we also add it to fungicide applications. So another, I put right down here, adding surge would also help drive fungicide into the plant and even help it possibly last longer throughout that season. So when you're adding the surge to this, would help benefit that. And remember, I told you about the component of boron. Boron will help take you through a longer pollination period if you have adequate boron in your plant. If you don't, you're going to have a short pollination period. Here's some research on soybeans with Hay Now in North Dakota. This was trial 1. This is trial 2. We had a 2.7 bushel advantage in one and 3.4 in the other. And that was only 1 quart of foliar application. What I have done now for the last 3 years is we took Hay Now, liquid carbon, and AgriSweet. If it happens to be grass, we substitute Agri-N, because Agri-N has 14% nitrogen in it. But I've used that program at 2 quarts of each on hay and pasture. Some farmers have even taken it over into other crops. And on the hay and pasture, we're doing it after each cutting. So therefore, he don't have to throw fertilizer out up front to try and fertilize it all year. And when he does it after each cutting, now he has more control over his hay production, and he may even gain a cutting in that year if he's feeding it, it has timely feeding it. So you cut it, you allow about 3 inches regrowth, you spray it. Remember, all products work together. So the hay now is feeding the plant. The carbon is releasing nutrients tied up in the soil, go up through the root system, and then the AgriSweet or Agri-N is feeding the microbes, which generate the energy and bring stuff back and forth to the root system. So they're all symbiotic, working together as a program. On the foliar research, here was Hay Now, Microhance, Toxin, Midnight, and a control. As you can see, there's advantages to quite a few of them. Looks like Hay Now is probably the top component here. Well, I should have numbered A, B, and C. But anyhow, there's the foliar. The R1 was 2 quarts to the acre on these particular variety of soybeans with a good ROI. That's what we're after. Surge. I talked a little bit about Surge. Surge happens to be more fulvic product. And remember, fulvic is drivers, so they drive. It has some humic, liquid carbon. Well, that makes it a really great product to add to anything that you want driven into the plant, which is usually something foliar. It could be fungicides, insecticides. It could be other kind of fertilizer or fertility, like the 8-16-8 we were talking about, or the Hay Now, or even premium. You can spray premium down on top. These are the components of Surge. Again, it's that blend, and we're using 1 to 2 quarts per acre added to wherever you're spraying over that crop. And always remember this, that fulvics are dry. Our activated humic is a protector. So you've got both things happening for you at the same time. Importance of water treatment. Calisco is a great treatment to your water. It also helps combine the calcium and magnesium in that water that actually will help the glyphosate to perform better. Remember, glyphosate is a chelate. So it grabs your magnesium, manganese out of it, and locks it up, ties it up, even sometimes the calcium. So you try using Calisco. It's not all that difficult. Depending on your water sources, it will help with the performance of the herbicide that you're applying, the fungicide you're applying, other chemicals that you might be adding. It's almost like a liquid AMS.
That Calisco is also on the extend label. You're on it, that can.
Yeah, he said that was on the extend label if you're using Dicam. And then these were just treatments that they did. Here's number 1 was a control. 2 was Roundup. 3 was Calisco and Roundup. And then this was AMS and Roundup. And you actually see better performance here with Calisco versus AMS. This is what we talk about when we say why dry. Remember, I want to farm right here. I don't want to broadcast it all the way across the rows. So when we wide drop, we're dropping it exactly beside the row on each side. This happens to be a rig that one of the local farmers made himself, and he rigged it up where he can, he has 3 valves that he can put more here, but he also dribbles it right down the center of the road. See that shank? What's not dribbling, he's actually injecting it. So he can put it more percent one place or another. Even something like this will help tremendously, and we call this the first wide drop because you're at V5, V6. This is just a sample of some of the high yield growers and what they're throwing in a wide drop. Okay, it would be a gallon of hay now premium. It'd be 2 quarts of zinc. Remember, zinc also helps release tidal phosphorus. And you'll have almost every single one of them using zinc in furrow, and even 2x2, and even wide drop if the tissue sample calls for it. Carbon, sugar, nitrogen, depends on the tissue sample, is how much more they're going to drop out here. A lot of them are putting anywhere from 15 to 20, 25 gallon 2x2 when we were talking about front load. So they're putting it on each side and underneath the seed. So that's what we talk about at wide drop. Midnight's a unique product. Many of you have probably tried some of it. It is stimulates the plant with its auxin development inside, which kind of like tricks it that it's doing more photosynthesis, and therefore produces more carbohydrates and sugar, enzymes, hormones. Here's the analysis of it. The 1084 plus sulfur, iron, zinc. I think I've got a test, maybe like, but it does provide sugars and humics and surge. This is also, it wants to be applied more or less by itself. Don't throw any other analysis in with it, because it would throw off the combination of these nutrients to perform the product, making the plant do more photosynthesis. Microhance is a great product. You've got 6 important nutrients in this product. And again, that's where some of them are putting it even in furrow or 2x2, wide dropping, or foliar spraying to recover the plant from nutrient deficiency. And here's the nutrients that you have in it: nitrogen, sulfur, boron, iron, manganese, and zinc. Here's a test in North Dakota. Sulfur 15 plus microhance yielded 6 more bushel. Sulfur is becoming a very critical nutrient now that all the electric plants have put pumping sulfur in. So it's becoming more of a nutrient that the plants are needing. This is where we're talking about second wide drop. If you have the capability, is around that V8, V10, because what am I doing that time? I'm trying to extend more kernels per year at that particular juncture. So they're putting in this same kind of mixture of hay now or premium blend in a gallon. 2 quarts of carbon, 2 quarts of zinc, 2 quarts of agri-sweet, then however much nitrogen that the plant is saying it still needs. They may adjust it down to 10 or 15 gallons or something like that. Agri-N is the difference is the 14% nitrogen and 26% sugar, as you see here. But a lot of people use this for a green up. We have green up the plant. Here is North Dakota dry beans, and we see midnight fungicide. Just fungicide by itself and in the control. This was a foliar application report at R1. Remember, the reproductive stages of the bean plant is starting at a critical time. I want to hold more blooms on, and this is what helped do it. This just explains a little bit about Midnight, the auxins and what it does in the plant, causing it to grow better, faster, take in more and do more photosynthesis, which in turn results in yield potential. Nanobound. Some of you up here have used Nanobound. If you're dealing with high salt or salt pockets in your soil, this product is designed to remediate salt. It has in it liquid carbon enzymes that actually help microbes in the soil to sequester salt. It also has microbes in it, and it also has nanotechnology that does the driving to get to that salt and help sequester it. I've worked with a couple of farmers up here that had dead zones in their field, and we used Nanobound. Within 2 years, they were growing their soybeans. So it will remediate. Again, these are just the biology that's in it. K28 is a great product. It has a component in it that helps buffer the salt that's in this. Is a 28% potash. We have actually some liquid carbon in this that helps to buffer that. And here's some of the ranges on early vegetative corn, cotton. You don't get into soybeans, sometimes wheat. But again, I'm telling you that if you want to push your yields, you need to experiment of using higher amounts of products to do that. When you stop to think about it, if you apply a pint per acre, it will go in the plant. It will make a difference. What happens when the plant runs out? Then it may go. It may take your yield up like this, but will it also come back down? And this is what we're seeing really with a lot of the farmers across the country. Is they start out with great programs and great intentions, and I've even had farmers tell me, said, I got the best looking corn crop, the best looking bean crop. And when it gets up about knee high, they don't do anything else. What do you think is going to happen? You started the plant to do a great job you wanted it to do, and now it's running out of fuel and it's going to start going back down. So this is where management plays a big key, especially during that reproductive stage on either corn or soybeans. Nano Boost is our top secret weapon. It's a penetrant, and it also mixes with about any chemical that you're going to apply and makes it go into the plant better, faster, quicker. So that you might want to experiment with Nano Boost on when you have a high resistant weed that you have a really hard time killing. Try some of this with your herbicides and see if it helps overcome the resistance. And if you can ever use 2 or even 3 modes of actions of chemicals with Nano Boost, then you'll help to overcome that resistance even faster. And again, this is just what makes it up. It's a penetrant, and you're only using like 3 or 4 or 5 ounces per acre. So it's a very low use rate. Here's a demo. This was Roundup or glyphosate by itself. And yes, this is off label. You're not supposed to have weeds that big when you go out to spraying them. But you see what we didn't take in enough glyphosate. This plant will recover and come right back out, sucker back out. This one, it took it all the way down, and it won't be coming back. That's the kind of difference that you could probably see with Nano Boost. Okay, guys, that's all I got to share with you tonight. If you got questions, I'll be glad to try and answer, and I appreciate you coming out. Thank you for your business. We are continually striving to develop new products that makes your farming easier, gives you more yield, better ROI. That's part of our company's motto. So we want to develop a product that works the best, the easiest, gives you the most return on investment. Any questions? If not, I'll turn it back over to Billy. Thank you guys for your participation. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. And anybody buys anything tonight, we can get a 10% off on the